this morning, we're in good shape.
After the discussion we just had, that's where we're going to start.
We have an amazing show for you. I'm going to share with you who is joining us here in just a few seconds. But before we do that, as we always do here on the Singularity Lab, we're going to discuss our logical fallacy of the day. I'm seeing 0 people in the room, but I'm seeing we're in the right room, so I can't tell. Y'all say hi if we're live, because it says we're live. But it's showing. Oh, there we go. There we go. All right. Yeah. So we are. All right. Today's logical fallacy, for those of you who don't know what a logical fallacy is, it's what your brain does to make sense of the world, but a lot of times it filters out important information. And so our logical fallacy today is the loaded question. Asking a question that has an assumption built into it so that it can't be answered without appearing guilty. For example, Grace and Helen were both romantically interested in Brad. One day, with Brad sitting within earshot, Grace asked in an inquisitive tone whether Helen was having any problems with a fungal infection.
Ooh, Ew.
That's terrible. That's terrible.
So
you should put your friend in.
So Luis, yeah, exactly. Tomorrow we've got KGRA on the Unidentified Celebrity View. So if you guys have not checked that out. What's that?
Micah Hanks is tomorrow.
Micah Hanks is tomorrow. It's going to be a heck of a show.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to it. Today we have a heck of a show as well. We've got Tim Ventura. He's a technology writer, futurist, digital marketing executive, and founder of APEC. APEC is the premier conference exploring alternative propulsion systems and thinkers. His work has been featured in Wired, Jane's Defense Weekly, Discovery, Nippon TV, and much, much more. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Tim Ventura. Tim, how are you?
Hey, doing well. Thanks for having me, guys.
Oh man, I'm excited to have you. It's been a while coming because you and I have been chatting quite a bit offline, and you are doing some amazing work over there at APEC. And so I guess let's start by kind of digging into what inspired you to launch APEC and where you see it going.
Well, many moons ago, I started a website called American Anti-Gravity, right? And we basically did experiments with field effect propulsion, ion wind. I think our big thing was something called the lifters, and then it kind of evolved over time. This is in the early 2000s. I started the site in 2002, and it evolved into interviewing a lot of I guess you would say the biggest names in terms of scientists, in terms of experimenters, the folks who were doing the work, the folks who were doing the theory, and the site was pretty big for quite a while. Again, around 2002 to 2007, that was when I actively was on that. We got up to a few million visitors a year. So again, larger site.
Wow.
And for various reasons, I think things just kind of petered out. Part of that was me. I went through an enormous divorce and had to kind of take a life survey, and focus on priorities. But I think the other part too was, we were basically moving faster than that community was generating content. And so we just kind of burned through everything that was there. And then it just became this issue of, well, should we just rehash things indefinitely or take a break? So the reason I mentioned American Anti-Gravity was that's where things started. Now, during the pandemic, because I've been in, corporate America for the last decade or so, just doing the daily grind like everybody else, I get this call from Mark Sokol, who is an experimenter. He's a garage experimenter in New Jersey, Hawthorne, New Jersey.
A friend of the show as well. Mark's a neat guy.
Yeah. Also, maybe the best looking guy in science.
Luis often compares him to
what's his Snow?
Jon Snow.
Jon Snow on Game of Thrones. He's got that curly.
Okay, I'm
just waiting for him to whip out a sword and lead us into battle.
And he just might do that. That's his personality too.
Yeah.
So he is a little bit of a wild man. He called me up out of the blue, had no idea who he was. He's like, "Yeah, we love your stuff. We want to do this conference, and we want you to moderate it." And I'm like, okay. I was like, back up. Who are you? Why are you calling me? Now at the time, this isn't to say, that I've been completely out of media stuff. When the pandemic hit, I lost my clients. And so I said, you know what, I'm just going to take a break. I'll hunker down and hide like, the rest of the country. And so I started writing. I started doing interviews and writing, you know, much like you do, except that in my case, I was transcribing and writing, which is kind of a masochist way to approach it. But you know, and so I was doing pretty well with that, and I was covering like a lot of defense stuff and a lot of emerging technologies. I had some really big interviews that I did. I was really excited about those. And so when he called out of the blue, I mean, to be honest, I was getting a little tired of typing out transcripts, you know, and I was like, maybe, oh, okay. So at this time, last November, just about almost exactly 1 year ago, um, we did our first event. And I the reason that I mentioned the timing is I think that really helped flavor our approach to it, because this was, again, the middle of the pandemic, right? You know, the body count is going up and up and up on the graphs, and it was also the middle of the election cycle, right, where, you know, the Democrats and the Republicans were just beating each other to a pulp in the polls, and we just wanted a break. You know, it was like, you know what, let's do something that's not related to the crap that's going on in the rest of the world.
Right.
And so we started the conference, and one of the things that we talked about was let's just be really mellow, you know? I mean, and you know, and I'm sure everybody in the audience can identify with that too. It's just, how can we keep this mellow and upbeat and positive and not negative like the daily news cycle is?
Mm.
So that was kind of where we started, and the first one was kind of a free for all. It was basically just a you know, like a 5-hour glimpse into Mark's garage, you know, and we started to get some of the folks from this community on the call, and you know, over the next couple of sessions, it was like, hey, let's start to have guest speakers, right? And so that's kind of
Oh,
where
so it
things are
was
at.
just when it started, it was literally just you guys going for 5 hours and going through the lab. Did he have the lab at the time?
Well, he did have the lab, yeah, and actually we were able to fill 5 hours. Not only were we able to fill it, our second session was 1 week later, so we had tons of material. And a lot of that was his content, and a lot of that was catch up, you know, and then we also pretty rapidly had a lot of folks from this community, a lot of the bigger names in this community show up, and so they would kind of pop in and start to speak, and that was kind of what brought the guest speaker idea to the forefront. But um, I think a couple of things made this really timely. One of them was this emerging propulsion, right? You could call it what you want, gravity geeks, or, you know, warp drive nerds, or whatever. All of those kind of, you know, it tends to be an older community, right? A lot of the folks in that, you're talking now, it's like 50s to 80s, and so they all were forced to learn Zoom. There's no other way that they would have used video chat, but the pandemic forced these folks to use Zoom. And what I think sparked this kernel in Mark's mind, this kernel of an idea, was he went to Jim Woodward's conference earlier that year. And normally, Jim Woodward, he did Mach's principal propulsion. Normally, they do a conference every year where they all show up. You know, it's called the Estes Park Conference. It's a big blowout. Everybody has fun. This year, they had to do it via Zoom. And so they had, I think, 10 or 12 speakers. So Mark went to that, and he came away and he said, wait a minute, if they can
I
do that
could
with
do
10 or
that.
12, you know? So that's how things started rolling, you know? It's just been just about a year, and we've had, I mean, I think about 80 speakers so far, you know? Not all of them are up on the website. A lot of people kind of pop in and chat briefly, but we've had a lot of folks come to it. We've reached thousands of people. We're featured in Popular Mechanics, you know, the
The
debrief, several
debrief,
other,
yeah.
yeah. So things are going pretty well, you know, and to be completely honest, that only thing that I keep in mind about it is just trying to keep it mellow, you know, which I know that sounds weird, but it's so
No,
easy, you know.
doesn't
It's
sound weird at all, man. I mean, that's how we do our shows. Is the idea is we take the information incredibly seriously. We just don't take ourselves seriously because, well, at least for our show, it's a lot about UAP, UFO centric. But even, I mean, I think it's a good philosophy to go into with any topic. Am I wrong?
No, and it's interesting, Lewis. Is it Louise or Lewis?
Lewis is fine.
Okay, sorry. It's interesting that you should mention that, because one of the things that's been kind of bouncing around my brain for a few months now is, in the old days, right? Like the days of TV broadcasts, you could set everything up and have everything perfect. Like with the podcast that I'm seeing on StreamYard, you guys have a really great presentation set up. But then at the same time, when you look at where the world is, all of us are on media a lot more. We're not able to break out a little box and say, okay, this is my media time, this is my airtime, and then after that, then I'm normal. And so I think what that means is all of us are going to have to adjust to the fact that it's in our lives a lot more, right? Like, I mean, StreamYard right now, this is one example, but a better example would be like, people Facebook and YouTube live stream all the time from their phones. They do group video chat from their phones. So we're on media, and a lot of that's recorded media all the time. So I think that we're going to adjust to it, and probably we'll end up showing each other a lot more of who we really are versus who we'd like people to think that we are.
I love this. There's a great meme out there about like me on Facebook, me on Instagram, me on Snapchat. And it's like, it goes from like, the perfect person to like doing blow off hookers, it's like.
Oh, the shift. It's interesting. I'm curious to know, and I'm sure people are already going to start looking into this, like benefits versus sort of harm to society that this pandemic has sort of forced us into. Because on one aspect, things I love about it is we get to have conversations like this, where I think 2 years ago we weren't thinking about doing anything remotely close to this. So the expansion of information and sharing of ideas is way more prevalent today than it was just a year ago, which is, I think, really cool. Another really cool thing that I love is that people get to spend more time with their families. People don't have to spend as much time in their car going to work, especially living out here in LA. Like, it's just a nightmare going to and from work. You're talking about 3 to 4 hours of your day is spent in a car. That's a quarter of your work day. So the pollution, the traffic, everything is coming down. And at the same time, it's also forcing GDP to catch up with the American blue collar worker, because right now, in the last almost 2 years, people have figured out how to make an income not having to go to that job that they absolutely loathe. They either took a job with a cousin, they started a YouTube channel. There's a multitude of things because people were forced to think and do differently. So I don't know where I'm going with this.
No, it's fascinating.
Like, if it's like somebody is looking into sort of the aspects, and because I know from a business aspect, like for example, Brandon Fugel, he wants people back in the office because he's a real estate guy. He's selling office space, and if people aren't in the office, he's not making money. So I'm curious, like, what is going to be the ramifications of this? And, do we eventually see like $25 an hour minimum wage, because that's what people need, because that's what GDP, it should be at $25 an hour right now.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because we were talking about this the other day about the pandemic being this sort of black swan event. This, it's almost like you think about a railroad track and you're going one direction, and then you just have a splitter and it goes in a completely different direction. The pandemic did that. And I read a great article the other day, I believe it was in the Atlantic, I'm not positive, but, everybody's very depressed about this idea that, the maybe cities are collapsing and people aren't going to work anymore. But at the same time, entrepreneurship is going through the roof. People are starting their own businesses like never before. They're able to do commerce from home. They're able to create things. And, I was talking about this the other day that, we just bought a house, and the reason is a bigger house because, our kids are turning 18, but they're not leaving immediately, and they're starting their own businesses, and they can work from home. And so they're not a slave to rent. They're not a slave to college debt. They can take classes on the side as they go and build that up, as opposed to the way the American dream was supposed to be working. And it just wasn't working. And the pandemic kind of woke us all up to that. What are your thoughts, Tim?
Yeah, I think that there are a ton of changes there, and I mean, going to what Lewis was saying also, it's strange when you think about it. If you go into your corporate office, your average corporate office, odds are you are, I mean, you could do the exact same thing from your home. The only thing you can't do is reach out and touch people. And so then, it brings to mind this idea of, well, how often would you do that? So maybe you'd shake hands. That's it, right? So you can't physically shake hands with people. Other than that, anything that you could do with that 3 or 4 hours of commute time. And I completely understand that because I used to commute from the east side into downtown Seattle, right? And it's the same thing. I'd go over the 520 bridge, where what was a 15-minute drive at night could turn into a 2, sometimes 3 hour one-way commute,
Yeah.
during the day. And it's like, okay, so what exactly are we losing? We can do all of this and more, and we can do it right from our home. So then the question becomes, what are the benefits to the average person? How much does that save the average person? And there is some corporate pushback, but in a sense, I think that could be partly where this great, what were they calling it? This great bailout, right? There's news stories about that. People are quitting in droves. And I
Oh,
think
the great resignation.
Resignation.
great
Yeah,
resignation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if maybe that's what's driving some of that. People are saying, well, look, why would I want to be in a building and be exposed to COVID when I could do the exact same thing from home? And the boss, basically the boss is like, well, because I want to look over your shoulder and make sure you're actually working. Okay, well, look, it's my own view is it should be results based.
Well,
Is the
haven't they
job
heard of
getting done?
TPS reports?
Yeah, there you
Just
go.
write a TPS report. Check the report. All right, Jimmy did his work.
Yeah, the amount of busy
Well,
work.
and people are so much more accountable when they have a project to finish. That was like when I used to work in an office building, not in one of the offices, but facilitating the office building with flowers and coffee. Where was I going with this? I got derailed. Oh yeah, so
Black
like
Swan.
the guys who were in the online, all the different computer stuff, they would all be in the same room. And I walked into the room a few times and turned on the light and got yelled at because they like to work in the dark by themselves with their computers. And they were all project based. So like their bosses would tell me, yeah, they screw around and they do nothing for like 3 or 4 days, and then when the projects due, they all buckle down and they get everything done in like 6 hours.
Sounds like the SNL writers' room, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's also like I was also hearing a really cool discussion about putting a price on your work. Like back in the day, somebody, if it say there was a campaign, an advertising campaign or something, and you hire an artist and you say, okay, I'm going to pay you $25,000 and I'm going to give you 3 months. And I want to see the work progression in over the 3 months. And now it's starting to become, you pay me $25,000 and I'll give you exactly what you want in 3 hours.
Right. Exactly.
And it's becoming, okay, well, what's the value? Is the value you micromanaging and telling me what to do on something I already know how to do, or something that I could execute immediately for you and bring value to your company that you're looking for? And also I could go on with my life.
Yeah.
Like we don't need to do this for 3 months. This could be done in a day.
Exactly.
I think this brings up you're touching on some really big issues of wage slavery in modern America, which is incredibly rampant, and and this production line mentality also. And so, like, I might get myself in trouble for saying this, but one of the big debates over the last couple of years has been the ramifications of slavery in ancient America, right? And we discuss it as if, well, it's a horrible tragedy, but thank God we're so enlightened that we don't do it anymore. We do. It never stopped. It just changed forms, and it's encompassing, and it encompasses anyone who's in that traditional production line environment. The fact that someone would walk around and look at you and make comments at your work while you're doing work. I mean, I work now in the real estate industry, in the IT industry. I've been in IT for 25 years. I've been in the real estate side of that for about 12. I owned a software company about 10 years ago, and that was when I transitioned full time to a home office. And For me, it's entirely based around deliverables, you know. So the other day I'd read about there are 2 or 3 companies out there trying to produce software that would go on your remote workstation, right? So they would send you a computer, or you would have a computer, you'd install it yourself, where it lets them spy on your emails, it lets them take photos of you all day long, it lets them record your keyboard strokes, you know. And these companies are like, well, we're having trouble getting this adopted. I'm like, well, yeah, of course. Who in their right mind would work for a company that's doing that? Because again, that is, I mean, that is, to me, that is a form of slavery, to be completely monitored and nitpicked down to that level, you know?
Well, and they
so,
train our kids for it in public school too, with that
Yeah.
exact same system. Like they give them the computer, but there's no freedom.
yeah,
Yeah.
we don't live in a production line world anymore either. It doesn't apply in today's world, you know?
At least here in the States, right? So, you know, China has got enormous factory production. But here in the States, and something that I think is interesting, and I believe it was TJ Allen who brought this up the other day, he goes, you do realize that the United States is 4% of the world, right? And I was like, 4%. Wow, that's I just hadn't done the math lately. And you're going, God, like we are so
But we're one of the
so
biggest
nation-centric.
consumers, though.
That's
the thing. For 4%, we consume. I don't know what the number is, but I'd venture to say somewhere in the 50 to 60%. You know, for as much as we consume and just toss.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really valuable point. The disposable society, right? And there have been books written about that as well. Yeah, everything is disposable, and it's a tragedy, you know, an environmental tragedy if nothing else. But it's
Right.
also a waste of money, you know, to buy something and have it break. I mean, that's what I find is even if you try and conserve, things aren't built to last like they used to be.
Well, it's a planned obsolescence.
Yeah,
Which is
so
a term I just learned recently. I was like, what is that?
What is
Yeah.
that?
Okay, so great question. It's kind of like what happened with Apple and what they did with their phones when they purposefully slowed them down, and it forced people to upgrade because they want you to turn over the phone. They purposefully build it so by the time that 2-year contract ends or that you're done paying it off, it's time to get another one because it's either broken, it's not working as fast, or it's almost like this Carl Sagan said, where we've got a society that is built around technology that it doesn't know how it works. Like, I don't know how a computer works. I don't know transistors or satellites, or if my iPad broke, I wouldn't be able to pop it open and fix it myself. I just don't have that technical capability, and it's because they don't want you to know how to do that. It's like this guy who fixes Teslas in Boston, I think, or Massachusetts, Rich Rebuilds. He's got a YouTube channel, and he got into a legal argument with Tesla because he lives in a state where he's got a right to fix things, and there's no shop that you take a Tesla to where they're like, there's no oil change. It's a whole different beast. And so Tesla's like, well, no one's going to want to figure this out because it's too hard. And this guy's like, no, I figured it out. I want to rebuild them. And like, so when he orders parts that he needs to make the car work, they don't sell it to him because they're like, no, we don't sell that part. We don't do that. And he's like, no, you have to, because in my state, you're legally obligated to. And so it forced Tesla to start providing parts in these states that have this right to fix law. So he made Elon Musk bend the knee, because he just wants to take a trash Tesla and another trash Tesla, meld them together and make sort of a new Tesla. And and they work and they're awesome. And it's we need 100 million more of those kinds of guys where they actually want to learn how the tech works and right to repair. There you go. Join the technicians. That's a great tape. Perfect.
Now, one thing, and I'm not sure if I should mention this or not. I started on a story last year. One of the things that working in business, anything, right? In economics, the more you have of anything, the less the per unit value typically is, right? You flood the market with something, the value drops, The same applies to employees. The same applies to people. And the world now, we're what, over 7 billion, 7.5 billion. I can't even keep track.
Keep up.
Yeah, overpopulation is horrible, and population density in urban areas also is, just peaking. And so one of the things that I kept thinking is a lot of these seem to be symptomatic of, you have too many people for available opportunities. And the thing that drives that home to me was I was in Redmond during the dot-com boom, and I was there during the boom and during the crash. And that was an obvious, economic opportunity to see how that works. When I first got there, they were desperate for labor. If you could pound a keyboard, you could make six figures back in 2000. And the employees were just insane in terms of their requests. They're like, well, I want 2 days off a week. And you know what? I don't want to work more than 6 hours at a stretch. And, we want to be able to drink beer at work. And, and the companies, they had no choice. They're just like, okay, well, yes, but please work for us, So then after the crash happened and you had this surplus of labor, it spun things on its ear, where it was like, nope, those days are over. You show up, you do your 8 to 12 hours, you get paid for 8, and, no drinking on the job, no having fun. We're going to sell the pool table, on Amazon, and
The ping pong is out.
Yeah. So, there was definitely a change there, a transition. And so that was in mind. I started a story last year on overpopulation and the devaluation of people. And I was going to write this pessimistic piece, and I'm like, oh, there's too many people in the world, yada, yada, yada. And I found this, I started doing research on it, and I found a big study that said we are actually, they believe, nobody's sure, they said that we're actually headed for a population crash in the next 100 years for sure. Which blew my mind, right? And I'm sure that scares the heck out of some people, because when you have something like that, again, what that's going to do is it's going to drive the price of labor and the standard of living up for the average person,
Right, which you're already seeing happening, right?
Yeah. So it was intriguing though, and what they said, and I've read this in other places. In fact, when I was doing research for this story, there was a one of the people peripherally related to it. He was doing education for rural Indian women, right? So he was in rural India, right? Like he's out in the sticks, and he was, I don't remember what it was. He was doing some kind of a health class or something like that. And he saw these women were like fidgeting with something in their saris. And he's like, well, what is going on here? What is going on? And so after about 20 minutes of this, because he wrote in this article I was reading, he says after about 20 minutes, he figures out that what these women are doing is they're trying to be polite. They're not going to show them, but they're playing with their phones, right? And what he realized was, if they're getting email and they're getting communications and all of that out in rural India, which is like, not close to anything, he's like, then what that means is education is reaching all of those areas. And he had said that is responsible and will continue to be responsible for falling birth rates, because, obviously education and birth control are the two biggest factors. It's when women have a choice, they choose to have fewer children, So
yeah.
That for me, that was just really, it was intriguing. And if the predictions are correct, because there have been papers that go both ways, but this was an enormous study on it. If those predictions are correct, we could be looking at a very different world in 100 years, a lot less people.
Yeah, and I think this, you think about folks like, Elon Musk, who is not, people in rural India having access to the internet. He's going to make it possible for every single person on the planet to have the internet. Now, what does that mean for his businesses and his infrastructure? He may be the next Facebook when it comes to data and analytics and mining people. But at the end of the day, you're right. The more education people have, the less children they have. That's just a fact. And so you have a lot of politicians freaking out because they're going, babies are the engine of the economy. And so what does the world look like when people aren't having explosive amounts of babies anymore? It's going to be a very different world. And I think when we start to imagine what the future is going to look like, we have to build in those assumptions and say, what are we going to do better? How are we going to be different so that we're not reliant on babies being born to, you know,
Wow,
function as a
feels-
society.
If you don't believe him, get yourself invited to a baby shower.
Well, I think the answer, Michael, is going to be AI, right?
Yeah, and
AI,
machines.
robotics, yeah.
Yeah, using, and I find this with business stuff, right? With just common business things. Use machines for what machines are good for. Use people what people are good for, right?
Mhm.
You know, and see, in that, in the traditional production economy, that does not make sense. That traditional mentality doesn't understand that people are creative problem solvers, and they don't do rote mechanical operations very well, right? They don't do the square peg and the square hole all day long. That breaks a person down psychologically.
Yeah.
You know, whereas the
Great point.
machine, you know, even AI, they excel at that, and they're not going to complain. So use machines for what they're good for, and then people can, you know, basically reach their potential as workers, as human beings, you know. So
Right.
I think, yeah, things could go that direction. That'd be a really optimistic view. And again, this
Well,
is
we're
going back.
optimists here at the Singularity Lab, so you're in the right room.
Well, going back 20 years to the dot-com boom, I saw things, not in the entire country, but in areas, in Redmond, definitely, in Silicon Valley, definitely, in those areas. It was on that track. I saw that happening, and it was natural market pressures.
Right.
That's when my parents were in Seattle, and I remember like having complete and total culture shock. Like, you would walk down the street and see an 18-year-old like get out of a Maserati with their designer briefcase, and you're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
I mean, I see that 15, 20 times a day in Los Angeles, where I'm just like, wow, that kid's got to be 19. And he's got a car that is worth more than everything that I've ever owned in my entire life. I'm like, where did I go wrong?
I'm actually kind of partial to that Tesla truck that's coming out. So
Yeah.
Are you?
Well,
I don't know if I like the
picture.
It's the one with the kind of modular design. It looks like it came out of Mad Max from Thunderdome.
Straight out of RoboCop.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
sedans are nice. The problem is, you know, I'm 45. I have a wife, a 12-year-old, and 2 dogs, right? So no matter what I drive, it's gotta function like a station wagon. As hard as I avoid the station wagon build, you know. So like right now I have a Ford Explorer, 2015 Explorer, you know, which I like to joke is just a station wagon with some lift, because you know, because
let's be honest, vans, SUVs, sports utility trucks, they're all station wagons. You're not going off the mountain on those things. You're not driving on the beach like the commercial. You're going to the soccer game and getting groceries, man. It's a station wagon. It's a station wagon, just bigger. It's got cooler tires, and if the zombies do come, maybe you'll know how to use it.
That's right. But you know what? It's worth the extra money not to drive a station wagon. That's the thing.
It's just cooler. I
feel like station wagons get a bad rap. Like, there's a really cool Mercedes-Benz station wagon, and BMW and Audi makes a pretty like damn, man, that thing looks like a sports car kind of station wagon. It's definitely not Griswoldy, that's for sure.
I think that when you get in that, though, I think that the testosterone will just start to evaporate from your body. You know, that's the problem, and it's a silent, insidious, silent process.
Listen, if my testosterone is seeping into a $20,000 bucket seat, I'm good with that. I'm good with that. Like that I'll drive anything to sit in one of those. I don't care what it looks like.
My cousin's a mechanic, and he used to specialize in Unimog. They're like a Mercedes truck, like a truck that you put attachments on and stuff. Yeah. That's a truck.
Christopher Plain wants to know, Kristen, if you could replace one daily task with a robot, what task would that be?
I hate dusting. So dusting or windows. Pretty much okay with all the other things.
This is the thing, though. This is the thing about robots, like that there are some things that are just so like we were talking the other day about like being a plumber or being an electrician. Like the idea of making a robot plumber or a robot electrician, it's just not going to happen. Like the amount of difficulty it is to move those things into individual. It's one thing to have an assembly line, right? It's one thing. That's what robots are good for. They're good for assembly lines. They're terrible for maneuverability and, you know, new situations and different environments. They're just stupid.
But that's why I think if I had kids I would definitely push them to learn a trade, like carpentry, plumbing,
Oh, yeah.
because those are going to be the last bastions where AI takes over, because
And
there's an art form to it.
Yeah, they're the least paid into educating yourself as to output for, so like plumber, electrician, handyman do very well.
Dude, it's like finding a handyman right now is so hard. Finding somebody to do your lawn right now is so hard. Like,
is it?
It is.
Well,
yes.
we're in Florida.
Oh yeah. Does that have something to do with it? Just
well, there's more lawn
There's more.
where.
Yeah,
and it's growing all the time.
You were gonna say like the COVID lawn economy, right? Like that's
no, there is. That's true because people are spending.
Oh, they are home, so they can.
People are home. They're irritated with the way their home looks. They're renovating more than ever. They're doing more lawn maintenance. They're doing more projects. Like it's a real thing. Like people are. I tried to call somebody to get some lawn work done the other day. They're like, dude, we'll see you in January. I was like, are you serious?
Wow.
Crazy.
Well, and everybody's low on staff again with the staffing problem. Like the car needed tires the other day and I called and they were like, well, if you bring it in, we might get it done. I only have 3 guys today. I'm like, okay.
Crazy. Thank you so much, Flora Sosa, for the $5 super sticker. Super appreciate that. Let's transition a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about what your vision is for not only APEC, but where you see, like, you've got some of the coolest minds coming on your conference to talk about alternative propulsion, alternative technology. Where do you see, like, does anybody have, like, are you like, oh, that guy's got it? Is it Mark? Does Mark have it? Like, where do you see this headed?
We have had so many brilliant minds, and there are plenty more out there who haven't been on yet, right? Our potential future guests,
Right.
There's such a diversity of ideas, I guess, and that's something I found years ago. Again, when I was doing American Anti-Gravity, I've kind of reached the point in this area where I look at all of these things as kind of potential futures, potential technologies, and one of the things that I found, this is just speaking personally, right, is every time I reach a point where I rule something out, I'm like, there's no way that's ever going to work. I find something else changes that spins it in my head. I'm like, oh, yeah, it could work, And so one example would be the Searle effect, which is that is a story unto itself. I think they have made a couple of cheesy movies on it, but someone should do it.
The Searle effect?
The Searle effect, yes, the Searle effect, and I could spend an so the Searle effect.
We got an hour. We got more than an hour.
Okay, the Searle effect. Basically, the story goes like this: 1940s. And I may get bits and pieces wrong because it's been a while. A young man named John R.R. Searle, John Roy Robert Searle, falls off the bed of back of an apple cart in Great Britain, hits his head, and has this vision of a spinning wheel within wheels. So if you've ever seen, how like a bearing, right, where you have a central disc, and then you've got little wheels around that, and then you've got a rim. Okay, so a simple Searle effect generator might look like a bearing, like a roller bearing, and then they have multiple ones where you have several rings around each other, so bearings within bearings. And his thing was, if you construct this with special layered materials and it's magnetic, and then you run current a certain way, it will start to self-spin and produce its own energy. And if it self-spins past a certain point, it'll produce an anti-gravity effect, right? And so
now we're talking about
free energy, 0 point,
free energy, right? Well,
yeah.
yes. I was just talking about like something that just a perpetual motion machine. And then in addition to that, anti-gravity, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So that's, that was the story. And so he again, this kind of percolated over to America over a period of years. I don't think he had much press in the US before the late 70s, but so it became, this was the fad for a while, and it caught on and it inspired a lot of people's imaginations. And he had photos of these wooden, they look just like flying saucers that they built with this SEG in them in Great Britain. And excuse me.
You got a cat? Oh, a bird.
Sorry. just coughing a little bit. I've been fighting a bug. So these flying saucers that they built in Great Britain, and people would say, well, okay, it looks like maybe there's something here. There are these old black and white photos of it flying, stuff like that. So then the stories, people start to dig, and they find out, well, the guy went to jail and the reasons were mysterious, but it might have been defrauding investors. What he claimed that the power company said that he was stealing power since he was putting more back onto their grid than he was taking, and just lots of drama. There's lots of drama surrounding the guy that goes way back when in the Midlands and in the UK area. So then other folks did more research, and they said, well, it looks like this guy could be a real con artist. It doesn't look like there's anything here. And when I was researching it, I found these pieces, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to kind of walk away from this one and say, okay, maybe, but probably not. Well, so there were a couple of Russians named Godin and Roshin, Sergei Godin and Vladimir Roshin, who did a replication of this without his help. They changed a lot of parameters. It wasn't identical to his. They claimed that they had positive results. This was in the late 90s, right? To actually build one of these devices, it cost probably upwards of $1 million, just because you're precision machining large parts and using special materials. And Searle claimed he did it because he worked at a factory that had the parts and had, like, it uses a lot of neodymium metal. He claimed he was able to do that back then. So when these guys recreated it in Russia, they said, yeah, we got it up to a certain speed and it kind of started to self-spin, just like he said it would. And I believe they also said, one of the other things he said was it runs cold. And that's part of the mythology, you might call it, for gravity modification, is these devices, supposedly they're drawing energy from the outside environment. They actually run cold, right? Similar to what UAPs are reported as doing. So in the case of Searle, the people started to say, well, maybe there's something here. Paul Murad and Morningstar Applied Physics, they did a replication in 2013, I believe, and they saw the same thing. They saw anomalous weight drops. Now, it's not easy to test, but we'll just say they saw anomalous weight drops with it. So what's interesting about Searle is there have actually been, I would say, probably 4 or 5 different experiments now. And every single time an experiment is done with a version of his device, they always report some positive results, which is intriguing, right? Because it's supposed to be a hoax. It's supposed to be complete BS. And yet, every time somebody builds something, they see something that he said happened when he fired his up. So, that's just one example of what's out there. Now, in Searle's case, the other thing, because I mentioned this when I started talking about him, the other thing that makes him interesting is because he's been around for so long, him, and then another one is T.T. Brown with the Beefield-Brown effect. They kind of set what you almost might call it like a cultural expectation for, in his case, like an anti-gravity device, right? You have these spinning magnets within each other, and it creates this lift, and it's out there in the culture, and so it sets an expectation of how these devices look and feel and function and things like that. So I think that there's kind of a dual value in that particular one. So those are a couple of the things that we've had folks cover at the conference. We've also had,
when it comes to the Searle machine, why do you think, obviously they're expensive to build, this sort of thing, but people are obviously intrigued enough and building them, they see some positive or anomalous effects. Do they stop testing? Like where you know what I'm saying? Like why not like bring these things and start doing some serious testing? Is it just they're unable, or it's too expensive, or what?
Yeah, I mean, it varies on a bunch of different stuff. In Morningstar's case, they ran out of funds. That was what it was. They had a lab, they had this machine, and again, testing them is not the easiest thing. I mean, if you have any kind of off center, off balance, then it shakes and wobbles, and that makes measuring the weight difficult, and that means multiple scales, and you're isolating things out, and so to do scientific analysis on these is difficult.
It's difficult.
Yeah,
right.
But it hints that just like UAPs do, I think it hints that time and space can be bent, And if you can modify gravity, you can probably do a warp drive, and probably do all sorts of really interesting things. And those are the topics that we try and cover at the conference.
Is UAP something that got you into alternate propulsion? Like, is that part of the no?
No, it's kind of the other way around, actually. I'd given up on UAPs years ago until the Navy sightings happened. And when those came to the forefront, that really changed my mind on it,
Hmm.
I mean, again, I don't want to sound critical or judgmental. We all have our own experiences, but back when I was doing American Anti-Gravity, I had someone, I won't say who was pretty notable in the community. And they said, "What do you think about UFOs?" And I said, "Well, I saw one. I actually saw, in my case, I saw what they call the stealth blimp." And I said, but I don't know what to make of it. And so I've kind of compartmentalized it, right? Like it's just in my own head. It's like in this little box where it's like I had this really, really obvious weird experience that I can't explain. And so I'm not going to try and explain it. I'm not going to add context. So I said, in terms of
Right.
UFOs in general, flying saucers and little green men and all that stuff, I was like, I was like, I think it's all psychological. I hate to say it, but I think this sounds psychological to me. And so this individual that I was talking to, he said, "Well, I'll tell you what." He's like, "I'm going to get 3 amazing abductees, and they're going to tell you their stories. We'll get on a conference call." He's like, "When you hear these people, you will believe." And again, this was someone notable. I was like, "Wow, that'd be really, So he got
Notable in what sense? Like notable within the UFO community, or notable outside of the community?
notable within the UFO community.
Got it.
And so this, again, I was working on stories, and I had the chance to get with these 3 abductees, and I listened to them describe their events, and I said, "You know what? These guys are hallucinating. None of this is real." I mean, that makes me sound like a really bad person saying that, but
No, it doesn't.
I just
It
looked
doesn't.
at it, I was like, I was like, if this is the cream of the crop, I was like, this sounds like garbage,
Yeah.
It's like,
Let me ask you this: were the people telling you the story, were they highly? What was it about them that this person thought they were insanely credible for to a point where they set up a meeting with you? Were they like government officials? Were they
no, they weren't.
doctors, lawyers?
They were abductees. They were abductees, and and that was their focus was,
Right.
not only are UFOs real, but they're abducting people, and I can prove it. And when you hear these people, you'll believe that they're being abducted, and again, when I heard the stories, it just sounded like what it sounded like to me was, it's not that people are lying, right? It's not. It's that sometimes all of us lie to ourselves, and that was the feeling that I had.
Wow.
They wanted to believe so badly that they were overlooking their own critical
Cognitive bias.
yeah. They're like, this happened and this happened and this happened. Then I was abducted here and here and here. And I was like, well, wait a minute. You're telling me, yeah. So that it's not that they're bad people. It's that they're deluding themselves and taking anybody else who believes them along for the ride. That was my feeling at the time. So I came into the UAP story with kind of a negative bias, and I mean, I think that one really started during the pandemic, and it started to just bubble up, get more and more and more popular, right? Until it became like this roar. I mean, really, for the last year, it's just been like this roar in the news. And I have contacts in the defense industry, I have contacts in the military, and everyone that I know, regardless of career or anything like that, they were like, well, there's something real here. And so that's kind of where I've come down on it too. I feel that there's something real there, and I think you could interpret that report that came out this summer in different ways. But see, I'm not the only person.
I took her off the screen, but I forgot to mute. I forgot to mute us. She goes, "I gotta sneeze."
Awesome.
That's now I don't feel bad about coughing.
You see, this is like, you couldn't do this on CNN or MSNBC. Like, this is what makes this 2021 so great.
Yeah,
you can get away with stuff like that now.
It's living, right? It's living with it versus staging a production,
Right.
But
People like
so
real. I mean, it's, you know.
yeah.
Sorry, go
So
ahead. You were saying.
so the UFO thing. I mean, that topic is it's intriguing. It's incredibly intriguing, and I think that's probably the big topic of 2021. My interpretation of that report, which I have read every which way, you know, and then I've looked at a lot of the other reports and stuff that are associated and related to it. There's the French Gaipan report. My takeaway on that report is that is the U.S. government admitting to the best extent they can. That's them admitting that UFOs are real, you know. And so I view that as a public admission. I'm not sure if anybody else, you know, I've met a couple of people who said that's not what that report said. I'm like, well, no, they're not going to come out and say ET is real. What they're going to say is there are anomalous phenomena that are real. They're also saying, hey, this could be a potential threat. We don't really know what's going on, you know. So
Sorry.
so you know,
awful
Professional
today.
all the way.
So terrible today.
You know what? You know what? You're out of here. I'm taking them out. I'm making a production call here. It's just you and me, Kristen.
But you, could
We're gonna sneeze again.
but you wouldn't be able to hear Chris. Yeah, you wouldn't be able to hear Kristen if you took me out because we're on the same.
Oh,
line.
okay. No, well,
so it's intriguing, you know. I think that's the biggest story of 2021, and it isn't over yet, but it does seem to be in a lull. I don't know if you've seen this. I know you guys follow the news, but it does seem like it built up to that Pentagon report. They launched the report, and then and I the feeling that I had was it was kind of like UFOs are real, and now what? What do we do now?
Yeah.
Nobody
I
thought.
know.
Nobody, you know.
Nobody
yeah,
knows.
thought that through.
we're in the dog days of summer, as they say.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
exactly.
like we're just waiting for new. I'll tell you when I think the next big, at least media hit is going to start coming is going to be in January when the law is passed, when the president signs the fiscal year 2022 budget, and HR 2350 is it that is going to get passed, and we're going to have a UFO office, and it's going to have the same sort of deadline as the previous report. And I think next year you're going to start hearing this going into December because you're going to get members of Congress and the Senate getting reports, possibly quarterly reports, definitely a yearly report on the UAP phenomenon. And they're going to be getting classified briefings. And I think they're going to start talking about it more. I think next year's going to be a lot of fun. And then I think 2023 is going to be public hearings. A lot. I think the government's going to have a lot more to say in 2 years on this topic than they do today. I think they're just lining up their ducks and how they're going to do it. That's the way it kind of appears to me. But I love that what you said earlier, how you had an experience, and you said it was a stealth blimp, and how to compartmentalize that experience away from the discussion that you're having, and that's something I've struggled with because I've also had an experience. I was 13 years old. It was really close. And the thing to me where I think the experience was definitely real. And the way I know this is because I don't feel like I'm lying to myself. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm changing the memories because it happened a long time ago. I'm open for that to be a possibility. But the thing that really strikes me is that 10, 15 other people saw it with me. You know, yeah. I mean, did we all have the hallucination? Are we all crazy with the exact same image? That's where I'm like, you know, that's where I have a hard time as an experiencer, quote unquote, dealing with the reality of what we saw. Now, that doesn't mean it wasn't a military black budget aircraft or something like that, even though there was no noise, even though the metal glowed, even though it was nothing that I'd ever seen ever before or after the experience. But it's just difficult. It's difficult to compartmentalize that in its own thing and also try to be objective and non-biased on how you talk about this, because I saw it. That doesn't mean I know what was in it.
I will say
I know what was controlling it. So that was,
right.
You know, yeah. What do you
I will say, if we ever do have the ability to travel backwards in time, I will 100% come to your 13th birthday party to mess with you. There's no doubt about it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Right. I mean, I guess if there was, you know what, Michael, I never really thought like where I would go again, you know, because everybody asks you if you have a time machine, where would you go back to? I tell you, I'd go right back to that. And man, I would try, if I could bring like recording equipment, I would absolutely do it.
Maybe
of course,
maybe it's you from the future, bro.
What's that?
Maybe it's you from the future, bro. You can't
hey,
take that off the table. You
can't.
can't take it off the table.
I can't.
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead.
yeah, no, I was just thinking another aspect of this is this. I mean, this last year was a really good year for UFOs. I mean, because the entire world went insane, right?
Mhm.
So when the entire world goes insane, why not have UFOs show up? That's
Right.
I mean,
Well, that's what I was shocked. Like when it was literally like the Pentagon admits to these leaked Navy videos in 2020, pandemic's raging. Pentagon goes, "Yep." Nobody blinked an eye except for UFO Twitter. Like nobody. I didn't even know UFO Twitter existed when that happened.
But think of all of the things that we've learned in the last year. I mean, things that no one would have guessed, right? Like in every zombie movie, you see people running, but in truth, when there's an apocalypse, people go to Costco and buy toilet paper, right? No one would have guessed. Like that would have been last on my list. And it's just like it's this
futurism is hard, Tim.
Yeah, like I got a garage full of paper towels now. I don't know what to do with them, just in case.
I was so out of the loop. I get like regular toilet paper delivery from Amazon, so everybody was freaked out, and I was like,
"We're sitting on two fucking cases of
toilet paper."
Yeah, you should start to black market that.
Yeah. I threatened. I said, "Honey, I'm putting this on Craigslist." She said, "No, you will not."
You want to hear something even worse? We got a toilet when this whole thing started. The toilet paper crisis was going down. My girlfriend also ordered toilet paper from Amazon, and we got toilet paper from China. Like it's got a weird packaging on it. It looks really rough, and we haven't opened it since we got it. And I'm like, okay, can we just get rid of this as we're not using it? She's like, no, you never know. She's like, well, we kind of do. And even when we did run out, which did happen, we didn't even go to this. Like, that's how bad it looks.
I did. Like, I go through like a lot of tissues. And so I ordered extra tissues, and they started sending me these old ass, like the flat boxes of Kleenex that were like off-white colored. So they kind of look white when they're in the box, but then if you blow your nose, it like turns sort of pink, and you're like, what is this?
That's kind of scary.
Yeah. So the pandemic was. This is. It's been a strange couple of years.
Strange trip.
Yeah. I don't know. You know what it does remind me though of is have you ever seen Mothman Prophecies with Richard Gere way back when?
You told me to watch it, and I haven't watched it yet.
Oh, that's right, I did. I've been telling friends to watch that. It's for me, one of the most interesting phenomena and poorly studied is mass hysteria, right? Talking about UFOs, the reason that I think I mentioned it was when the Mothman prophecy happened, and I think it was Pleasant Valley, whenever it was, there were a bunch of UFO reporting sightings at the same time. So it's almost like everybody gets on edge. Everyone has a similar anxiety, and maybe they become more sensitized to things that are going around. The mind plays tricks on them. Everything kind of goes insane all at once. And so the closest movie that I saw, even though it was highly fictionalized, was the Mothman Prophecy. And I remember when I watched that, I was like, yeah, that right there, So
I think Dean Koontz Phantoms touches on that same old story, I think.
I think I've seen some of. I think I saw part of that, but
maybe I could be going on the wrong. Yeah.
You have something?
Yeah.
No. Well, I was just
no. I was like, no, just mouth agape.
Agreeing with Kristen here. Well, I mean, so what are sort of the some of the more interesting either projects or experiments that are being conducted by APEC right now that are showing the most promise?
Well, so Mark is building a lot of this stuff in his garage, right?
Yeah.
And again, that's kind of our in this community. I mean, you've got scientist types. You have real scientists, right? You have some very notable scientists who are doing real experiments, but you also have a lot of people who are trying to build things in the garage. And so
right.
Mark exemplifies that. He's out there just trying to build what he can. One of those was he's been experimenting with superconductors. There was a fellow named Eugene Podkletnov who I interviewed, and in the very late 80s, early 90s, he did experiments in Tampere with rotating superconductors, and he believed they created a gravitational shielding effect above them. Then in the 2000s, he also published about what he called a gravitational impulse generator. And that was a stationary superconductor with an electrical discharge that hit it. And what he claimed was that gave off what they believed to be a gravitational impulse that was crushing brick and warping metal, right? So very substantial. And so Mark was trying to experiment with superconductors the same way that Podkletnov described, I guess, in some ways. No results. He's been able to blow things up in the lab. I mean, not like gravitational impulses, but literally superconductors blowing up, right? Because they're very fragile, especially when you take them down to 200 degrees below zero or whatever. So, we've had that. We've had there are some, you might call them off-center rotators, right? Where it kind of shakes its way to space. That's the idea behind it. And you would almost call that mechanical reactionless propulsion. But the idea is it shakes more in one direction than the other. And physics has a very good explanation for why that will never work. But yet at the same time, people keep building them and they do seem to get results. So, we've had lots and lots of different experiments and experimenters on.
What do you make of Nick just brought up Jack Sarfati? We had him on the podcast a few weeks ago. Very controversial guest, by the way, as I'm sure you know. What do you make of Sarfati? What do you make of A, his Tic Tac from the Future story, and then B, that he believes he's got it. He believes he's pretty much figured out UAP from the future. He believes if we had the metamaterials, he could manufacture it. What are your thoughts on him?
Well, so I know in Jack's case, what he's described in terms of metamaterials, I haven't met anyone who disputes that outright. There are different people who have said, well, maybe this, maybe that, but I haven't met anyone who said, no, that won't work. That's the wrong path. And I have met many people who say this is absolutely brilliant. So I would say in terms of Jack's work, that's something that's definitely on the right track. I mean, what he's talking about is he's saying we can change the propagation speed of gravity inside of these materials, and we can get behavior out of it that wouldn't otherwise be possible within the model of general relativity. So, his idea is very sound, right? I mean, he is a theoretical physicist, and so he is focused on doing the math more than he is the materials engineering. So
right.
I would say probably a lot more needs to be done there. But it is interesting. And Jack himself is an incredible character. I mean,
he's almost a caricature of a person.
But he truly did the 20th century. I mean, he has met so many just science and cultural celebrities and artists and all
Timothy
sorts
Leary
of
he was palling around with, and
yeah.
Amazing.
He's an incredible personality. Sometimes he rubs people the wrong way. I mean, but
he cracked me up. We had a fantastic conversation. It was fun. The guy's wild,
and brilliant, and incredibly brilliant.
Yeah. Like I was trying to keep up with the math, and I was like, "Can you explain this to a layman?" He's pissed. He's like, "What do you don't know what fractions are? Like, come on, dude." I was like, "Bro, like it's so far over my head." Oh yeah, Campbell remembers. Haha, the fraction stuff. Damn, yeah.
I'm doing fractions with my daughter at night now. That's part of our homeschooling thing. So,
how many of the ideas or concepts that are being thrown around our APEC? How often does that happen to you? What happened with Mike and Sarfati and me as well? It happens to me all the time, where the conversation or the idea or the theory just is so beyond your knowledge of it. How do we test these things? Like how do we?
All the time.
Yeah.
I'm not a physicist, And I used to be fairly good at some of the math and most of the concepts, but again, that's 12 years and fading in the distance. And so from the conference perspective, my focus is really I know enough to kind of know when things have potential and when they're headed in a completely bad direction, right? In that perspective, again, we do try and I mean, we are aiming for credibility, although we are a little bit looser on that, um, but yeah, part of it's that. I think the other part too is when you're working in emerging science, people have different models and they pick up different pieces from different models. And so even if you were really rigorous, like PhD physicists have to sit down and look at a lot of this stuff and say, okay, where is this person coming from when they develop this? Because they're not coming from a standard approach. So then they have to say, how did they derive this? And then what does that mean? So I think even if you were, some kind of a super genius PhD, it would take some work. Now, I did meet one fellow who is absolutely brilliant, a fellow named David Chester. And the thing that I liked about him was he is one of the very few physicists I've met who is very good at meta-analysis, right? So he can take, not only will he take like not only can he go through a theory and say, this is how you might achieve this within this theory, he could take 2 or 3 different models or 4 or 5 of them, and 2 of them might be something that some guy scribbled out on a napkin. And he could say, he can compare them and say, in this model, this is how you do this, but it would work better if you looked at it from this perspective. And based on, comparing this other model here doesn't fit with these remaining ones. So he's able to actually look at the same idea in several different theories at once. And
Wow.
that's very rare. I've seen him do that a few times, and I was just like, that's genius right there.
I love the fact that you bring on that you're okay with bringing on, citizen scientists, tinkerers. I'm curious what your thoughts are when it comes to like, academia and theoretical physicists, and then versus the, the garage tinkerer versus the person who's maybe new to a field but they're just like inspired by it and coming up with ideas. Like, where do you think if we start to see some of these technologies actually come to fruition, do you think it comes from academia? Does it come from private industry? Does it come from the garage tinkerer? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it takes all types. I think it takes all types. I know mainstream academic physics has some real problems, right? And they don't like to admit that, but I think it's become incredibly obvious. I mean, one of the biggest issues is when you get into theoretical physics, everything they do involves high energy particle colliders. So of course, everything involves high energy physics, right? So it's like, well, we believe there are 25 different dimensions buried inside the atom, but you need a particle collider to make them visible. Well, do you really, or is it just that
You
since
like
the
to
only thing you
smash
have is a
stuff.
hammer, every problem is a nail?
Right.
Yeah. I
Right.
mean, so that's part of it. The other thing that I think is kind of humorous is it it's it 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 amuses me and saddens me that science and scientists like to quote Galileo and the Catholic Church's persecution of science in its infancy and say, we're better than them, and yet when you look at something like Pons and Fleischmann with cold fusion, they did exactly the same thing. And it's not just Pons and Fleischmann. The problem is, they tore down the marble halls of religion and built the marble halls of science, and it's the exact same thing. That's one of the challenges is, there should
They won't
be.
even take you seriously unless you have a degree, right? They don't take you seriously unless you're a PhD, and I think that's frustrating to me.
Yeah, and that's frustrating to a lot of people, and it's slightly irrational as well, right? Like, you have people with a PhD that doesn't match their specialization, doing work in one
Mhm.
field, I mean, so yeah, it's basically it's kind of like it's an inside club. I guess that's the way to express it. But at the same time, this is an area that they're not particularly interested in, so. I would say for the most part, the mainstream physics community tends to leave this community alone, and I think that this community has reached a point where they're tired of fighting with it. So in terms of the conference, I think that just lets us kind of do our thing.
Right.
Um,
But it's a shame, right? Because think about what could be done if you have people who are not staring in the same, with the same blinders on, who have these incredible minds. you know, if all these people were working together, and I'm just an optimist here, but like if you did have them working together, like that would be powerful.
Well, and I feel like they're all put through the same assembly line, which kind of doesn't add but takes away. It like strips away different processes of creativity, and that's what they're all missing. They're all missing the same things.
But I think the hope with APEC is because again, these communities have been, throwing rocks at each other for decades. I think the hope is to be able to bridge those gaps, right?
Right.
I think that there's absolutely mainstream PhD physicists can contribute, and garage engineers can contribute, and then the question becomes, how can we put these people together so that they can, benefit each other, right?
Right. And I love that you're doing that. Byron McDonald, thank you so much for the $5 donation. Tim, are you following the Martin Flieschmann Memorial Project Open Science effort? Sapphire, Brilliant Light Power, Andrea Rossi.
I've heard references to it, but I'm really not following it right now.
Send links, Byron. We'll check it out. Fantastic. Okay, so you mentioned 0 point energy earlier. For those of us who have no idea what that is, can you explain from a layman's perspective?
Well, I guess there's a couple different ways to look at it, but you could talk about extracting energy from the vacuum. Another way, and this is kind of cheating a little bit, is you might be able to say extracting energy from Brownian motion, right? And so the reason I mentioned that is there was a device. It was a circuit that used two diodes, and it actually extracts electrical energy from heat at room temperature. And so basically you build this circuit and it will start to generate a little bit of a current, and it does that by the wiggle of the atoms just due to heat. So it's not like a heat flow. It's not like a heat sink or a heat pump or anything like that. You're not moving heat from one place to another. It's just that the heat makes the atoms wiggle a little bit, and they can basically take that in a circuit and create a current.
Right.
You could almost look at that as 0 point energy, because it's ambient energy in the environment. You're just extracting it.
Right.
True 0 point energy, basically, I think the idea would be like quantum foam, right? Where you have these virtual particles that come into and leave existence, really rapidly. True 0 point energy, maybe you're extracting energy from those. So.
Awesome. We have a question here from Pat Calabria. Thank you so much for the $5 donation. What kind of speed would the warp drive supposed to be able to reach? Sublight or the speed of light, hypothetically speaking? What kind of speed would the warp drive supposed to be able to? I'm not sure I understand the question exactly.
I think he's asking what the speed limit of a. I'm not sure if it's that clear cut. Again, the folks who are doing work in this area, I haven't seen a lot of predictions like we could hit warp 5 kind of a thing. I think it's more like the idea of a warp drive is, as everyone knows, you're basically bending time space. And then in an Alcubierre drive, since time space is bent around the craft, you can move the bent time space. Jack Sarfati has talked about this also, right? And so the experiencer inside of the craft would feel normal conditions, even though they might be moving at a high velocity, maybe faster than light. But see, to them, it wouldn't be faster than light because it's normal time space. So, the warp drive it's not as clear cut,
Right. Alcubierre drive, obviously in mainstream physics, it's been supposedly debunked. Is this something that you think still has legs?
So if I remember right, the requirement for the Alcubierre drive was negative mass or negative energy or both. And I've seen different approaches to overcoming that. I wouldn't say debunked. I would say that it has requirements that we don't understand how to meet, right? Like how do you get negative mass? How do you get negative energy? So it's not debunking it to say this, this is wrong. It's more like saying, well, okay, if we could do this, we could get there, but we don't know how this can be done or if it can be done at all.
Right. It's theoretical, right?
And so I've seen different approaches. In fact, I have one fellow, I forgot his name, who I'm hoping will come on. He had an idea how to overcome the negative requirements through using some kind of a pulse system. I saw another paper, I believe it was by Eric Davis, where Davis was talking about using spin, and you could use spin to basically create an outward push that would be the same thing as a negative energy. So,
Right.
yeah, I would say with this kind of topic, you never want to rule anything out. Again, the minute you rule it out, something else will come from another perspective, and you say, "Oh, well, now I understand how that might work." You know.
Right. Right. Yes. Debunked is not the right word. Tim is 100% correct. We've got another guest that's joining us. This is our resident madman here, Bradley Voorhees from Sonic Gravity. Welcome, Brad.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for
Can you hear us?
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, brother. Thanks for joining us. So Brad was actually visiting Mark Sokol at his lab recently. Yeah, Brad?
Yeah, it was awesome.
How'd it
I
go?
had a feeling we were going to see Bradley today.
Yeah,
How
what
was
a great
the
guy.
what's that?
It was awesome, man. He's a great guy. I mean, I sort of feel bad because I just showed up and got to work. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't much for pleasantries and conversation. I just showed up and just, hey, you got this tool? You got that one? What about these magnets? And yeah, I just tore it up from start to finish.
That's
And I asked him,
awesome.
I said, hey,
Was he ever like? Did you ever ask, who are you and why are you here?
Well, it's funny because we were on the Unidentified Celebrity Review phone home panel on day 2, and I talked about the quantum echo hypothesis and all that stuff, and then he pretty much said, it's crap. If you can't build it, what good is it? And so I was like, all right, man, I'm gonna build it now. When it works, So yeah, it was good.
Brad, I'm not sure if your microphone is on. I think it might be. We're not getting that usual, that great,
deep, gritty Lou Elizondo neck voice.
Yep.
Late night radio voice, is that it?
Yes, exactly. Tim, so and thank you again for joining us, Bradley. Tim, can you give us some more insight as to where you see APEC going next? Like, what are you hoping to achieve, or where do you think it's headed?
Well, I mean, we definitely want to cover the scope of alternative propulsion, right? And then the question is, what is alternative propulsion? Now, in my view, that includes stuff like fusion drives, fission drives, things like that. Even though most of us couldn't even begin to build those in a garage. I mean, legally, right? You couldn't legally begin to build one of those in your garage, But like, I think things like that are still valuable, and it shows that there's an alternative to rockets, right? And that's something that NASA is talking about. I mean, as someone who writes futurism, I tend to put these things on kind of a spectrum, and I may offend various people by saying it, right? But right now we have rockets, and we will continue to have rockets to Mars and beyond. Who knows? Maybe another 50 years of rockets. And I think that various pressures, fuel costs, range, speed, payload, environmental factors are going to start to push people towards, other types of propulsion systems. I think after that, we're going to start to look at nuclear fission. And I think shortly after that, nuclear fusion, because as it turns out, fusion drives are not as hard to build as controlled fusion electrical generators. So we'll probably be at stuff like the Expanse. I don't know, give that 50 to 75 years and we'll start to see drives like that. And those, even those are pretty amazing. I don't remember what the exact weeks are, but if I remember right, it's something like 3 days to 2 weeks to Mars, right? At like a 1G thrust, depending on where the orbit is or something. So even with those kinds of drives, we can open up the solar system, And I think things like gravity modification and warp drives will follow after that. So I don't see all of these, I don't see them competing. I see them more as pieces on a spectrum.
Right, that are evolving.
It's evolving.
You brought up the Expanse, which is interesting because that show did a wonderful job of talking about the politics of space exploration. This is one of the most concerning things that I think about when it comes to folks like Musk and some of these guys running to Mars and potentially creating industry throughout the solar system, which is part of what, the operations will be. But like the idea of who's controlling what, where, who's got all the power. It's really interesting as a
Space
futurist
law.
writer, Tim. Yeah, as a futurist, Tim, like, do you think the Expanse was kind of accurate here?
It's intriguing, right? It is intriguing. I mean, it's hard to say. I would definitely put it in the realm of fiction, but I think I understand what they were trying to do in terms of, I think they were trying to portray Mars as kind of like the West, right? Where it's like people who want to get away from the BS of, that's why Americans, the pioneers traveled west. They wanted to get away from the BS on the East Coast, so they went out and created the new world on the West Coast. So I think they were trying to kind of contrast those two societies. And then the belt is in their case, right? That's just that's like the people view it as the refuse, but they view themselves as being out on the edge. So I don't know. It is intriguing.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating.
I did like the fact that I did like their portrayal of fusion drives, though. That was interesting, because what they were showing was an intermediary solution, right? It's not rockets, but it's not Star Trek. It's somewhere in between.
Right. Sorry, Luis, I just muted you there for a second. I was getting some weird echoey background noise.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Not sure what it was. Brad, so why don't you tell us a little bit about how your experiment went with Mark? Everybody wants an update.
Okay, so the magnets. Do you guys hear me now? Is that better?
Yeah, way better.
Yeah, so much better. Maybe give us a little background too on the VAG. So this is the we have some listeners who listen to Brad's podcast as well, so they're very familiar with this. But maybe you could catch us up on what your experiment is, what your vision is, and I'd love to get Tim's feedback and thoughts on it as well.
Hey, super. So the hypothesis is that as we move through time, like you can think of time as film, like old movies, right? Where the film goes and it goes frame by frame and it changes just a little bit and it's a moving picture. Well, if you take all those frames and you chop them up and stack them like sliced cheese, then your front of the frame is essentially your view of the universe. And if you turn it to the side, the thickness of those frames is like your slice of cheese. It's like your instant of plank time that you're in. And so the hypothesis is built around the idea that the Higgs field is really essentially the gravitational field that holds us to our slice of cheese. So essentially, it carries all the matter that's in our instant of time with us through time. And if that's the case, if that's true, and the Higgs field, the Higgs string is the only string that doesn't have a spin per se. It doesn't like oscillate on its own. And so the idea is because the Higgs field was discovered, because scientists believe that it slowed down these left-handed electrons. The right-handed electrons are photons, and those fly at the speed of light unimpeded. But left-handed electrons get hung up by the Higgs field as they trade what's called a weak hypercharge back and forth. But because they get hung up, and this is where I'm sort of blending Newtonian physics and quantum physics, because those left-handed electrons are getting hung up by the Higgs field, Newton's laws of motion say that an action creates an equal and opposite reaction. So if the Higgs field is slowing those electrons down, then those electrons are also pushing on the Higgs field. And so what I'm creating is essentially a electromagnetic field that will pulse, and it pulses. And if you think of like a swing, pushing somebody on a swing. So one of the part of the hypothesis is that the Higgs field holds the matter in the universe to the slice of cheese in a 4-plank circle. So if you push like a swing on one side, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4 out, and 1, 2, 3, 4 back. And so if you push 1 to 8 ratio, then the idea is that you'll push them like a swing, and eventually that's resonance. You hit resonance and you'll bust the Higgs string off of our atoms in what they call, legit in physics, a spontaneous symmetry break. And if that happens, then our mass goes to 0. And then what happens, I think, is the disassociated Higgs field no longer breaks the symmetry of the weak nuclear force. And so you get what you call the electro weak force. And so what happens is we build this electromagnetic field, and the way we do it actually, see, if it goes like this. So here's your conducting filaments, here's your magnets. Now, anytime you put a magnet, anytime you move a conductor through a magnetic field, it creates a current. And so the way we're going to pulse this field is we take a disc of magnet spokes and a disc of conducting spokes, and then we spin them super duper fast. And so when it's like this, there's a magnetic field. When it goes like this, then there's a circuit, and a circuit creates a magnetic field. Then it goes like this, no field, no circuit, like this, field, circuit. And so as it goes like this, it pulses the field. Does that make sense? So when the field's pulsing and the way we achieve this 8-to-1 frequency at every RPM is by taking the thickness of the magnet and spacing them 8 times the thickness of the magnet apart. So then at any time we spin it, we're going to hit the same exact proportional sort of frequency. So no matter how fast we go, we're going to be hitting it at the right spot. And so once we disassociate from the Higgs field, we create what I call a mass hole. And essentially, if we toss all of our mass out, we're sitting in a mass hole, and then the universe, just like a suction cup, you can't pull a suction cup off a window because the universe knows if you pull it back, there's a vacuum there. Well, the universe knows that there's no mass inside this electric field that has kicked out all the Higgs bosons. And probably like a couple of the other regular bosons. And so the universe is going to try to push mass into our mass hole, right? Now, it's going to be equal all around. And so the key is to figure out how to get the universe to shove our mass hole harder in the opposite direction we want to go. So if I want to go forward, I need to figure out how to get the universe to push harder on my mass hole in the back so that I can fly forward. If I want to go left, I got to make it push harder on the right. And so the way we do this, so the way
you're good.
I'm just gonna say maybe we change the name of it from mass hole to maybe
he loves it.
Mass. Because you start saying mass hole behind me, we got to get my mass hole here, my mass hole there. I think it's especially if it hits your ears for the first time, it just makes you chuckle.
I know. That's what I think. I'm pretty sure that's what Brad likes about it. I'm fairly certain.
I think it's funny that we're all like 5th graders and we can't like listen to it like adults
without concluding that it's a naughty joke. Yeah. That's hilarious.
Well, the electrogravity, the turbine, I've called the Voorhees anti-gravity engine, which is the VAG, and the motor that we're gonna use to sort of motivate ourselves is like the Voorhees anti-gravity engine joined. Anyway, it's vajazzle. So what we're gonna do is essentially we're gonna have essentially we're going to have we're going to have a microwave emitter inside the ship. And what we're going to do is we're going to point that microwave emitter, and it's the same microwave that Christina heats her ramen with, and Squidding heats his hot pockets with. It's a microwave emitter, just like the microwave oven. And so we're going to point this microwave emitter in the direction we want to go, and then we're going to turn it on. And what's going to happen is it's going to shoot microwaves. It's going to shoot a teeny weeny bit of mass, a teeny weeny bit of particle matter in the direction we want to go. And what that's going to tell the weak nuclear force is it's going to say, oh man, there's a little something in front of the ship, so I don't have to push quite as hard on the front of the ship because there's something there, but there's nothing in the back. And so the weak nuclear force is going to shove harder in the back than in the front. And so essentially, you're going to be able to point your microwaves in whatever direction you want to go, and you're going to zip that way. Because you're massless, you don't need hardly any force. Because if you're massless, even a little teeny nudge should shoot you at the speed of light, almost, if you're massless. I don't know that it would totally be massless, but there it is.
I just wanted to say hello to, thank you, Brad. I just want to say hello to Falcon Space. What's up, Mark Sokol in the house? Good to see you, brother. All right. So, so one of the things that's amazing about Brad is not only does he have a very rich sense of humor, but he's only been studying quantum physics for about 4 months now, I believe. And he legitimately believes that he's figured something out pretty incredible. And unfortunately, a lot of folks in academia won't talk to him, which is annoying. Maybe it's the mass hole. I'm not sure. But I'd love to get Tim. I'd love to, just based on you have a lot of experience with APEC, you have a lot of experience, working with, citizen scientists and theoretical folks. What are your thoughts on what Brad is?
Well, I mean, I would say so for something like this, I do some hands-on experiments. Bring some hands-on experiments. I mean, stuff like this, we love to have video, right? And if you're able to say, I mean, as you're describing things now, if you were able to show us, okay, here is how I built this, and here is how it's expected to function, and then you can provide like a little bit of both, and it's like, okay, here's my model, and here's how we expect it to work. For something like this, it probably wouldn't make the best theoretical presentation, right? Without a lot of math and rigorous proofs and all that. But to be able to construct something and say, here's what I'm building, here's why I think it'll work, that'd be really awesome. I mean, as to whether or not I think it will or will not work, that's not up to me to make that determination. That's something that you are building, and it's your experiment. So I'd say go for it.
That's what I said too.
I mean, the whole idea is that, I mean, I probably won't have the, I probably won't have the precision that I need, sort of the vaginal frequency. I'll probably need to, tweak that a little bit. But if it works at all, my hope is that, and what I'm going to do is I bought a mechanical scale. So I'm going to take it. It's about 3 foot by 2 foot and about 5 inches tall. I'm going to take it. I'm going to put it on that scale, and then I'm going to turn it on. And if it gets lighter, then victory. And, if it doesn't, then back to the drawing board, because I'm certain that is exactly how those Tic Tacs are flying, because somebody sent me, it was probably 2 weeks after if you see, like, it's called Disclosure Supremacy, the cover art on that, somebody sent me a component, allegedly a component of a downed UFO that they took like in the 40s or 50s or something. And if you look at that, and then you look at, my pictures of the vag, you'll see exactly where that thing fits into the geometry of the vag. I mean, so I know for certain
every time, man.
Well, let me ask you this: when you went to Sokol's lab, you obviously had to run this idea by him, and you guys must have talked about it, maybe worked through it a little bit. What were Mark's thoughts on it?
He was skeptical.
And Mark said, if you want to hop in the room, we got room for you. But go ahead, Brad. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, well, my impression, you can ask him, but my impression was that he was skeptical at first. But then when we talked about the Faraday disc, and we talked about how, essentially that thing is a battery, and then the pulsing and the geometry and everything, I think he was like, fuck, that might work. And so, I mean, we'll see. But he was not a believer, and he thought everything was bullshit until he saw me getting close to, I think, finishing it. And so, I mean, I think because a lot of times, it's hard for people to communicate their vision, but once you have it like physically in front of them and you can point to it, and then I think it makes tons of sense. And I think it made more sense to him after that.
Delta Uniform says, this has to be a joke. Brad's playing the long game. Is that what I'm going to let you speak to that, Brad.
What's the long game?
just to mess with us for years and years and years. I think
No,
would
I
be the
mean,
long
that's
game.
funny. I would if I found it in my best interest, I would string you all along and I would toy with you all. But it's not a joke. And I've essentially said to everybody, I was like, I'm going to take responsibility for the outcome too. I'm going to try to build it. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to tell you that it doesn't work. And so it's one of those things where, I'm not stringing anybody along, because in 2 weeks or so, I'm probably going to have at least a prototype. I'm going to have the test results of a prototype, and I'm going to film the whole thing. And so it's not going to be like that Russian dude who like turns his little thing on and he's looking at it and then cut, and now it's like straight up in the air. Like, you're going to sit there, you're going to watch it. You're going to probably hear me freak out wondering if I'm going to like get sucked into a vortex. But I'm going to be like panning across, the tachometer and the multimeter and the reading on the scale, and soup to nuts, start to finish. You're going to see the whole thing. I mean, it won't be any bullshit. And if it works, then that needle's going to get lighter. And
you heard it here. You heard it first here, folks, on the Singularity Lab. This is not a long con. This is Brad believes in this. He just has
He's 2 weeks out.
He's
2 weeks out from figuring out the secrets of the universe. I'm excited.
Or maybe it was Brad who was coming back from the future to your 13th birthday party. That's a significant possibility.
But what I wonder, and I don't mean to sound disrespectful, is the acronyms, the VAG and the mass hole. I think that was why that was. I think that might have been what threw them. Because I hate to admit
company mascots.
Yeah, because my
masshole mascots.
Well, I love this idea though. I think it's funny, and I love if Bradley's onto something here, and he actually figures something out, and it doesn't matter what the names are, and then he can literally use those names and rub it in the face of theoretical physicists. I mean, to me,
well,
that's
I
just,
can tell you this, Bradley. If you get Neil deGrasse Tyson to talk about mass holes and vages because we figured out a new propulsion system, good on you, sir.
Falcons, Mark, I sent you the link to your email. I've sent you the link to your email. This is why I love live streaming, because this is so cool. Mark Sokol's going to hop in here and join the fun. And I'm not going to keep you all night, Tim. I know you got to go. We're going to go about 20 more minutes. Is that okay?
Yeah, no, that works.
Okay, cool. So Falcon Space, I sent it to your email.
Well, by the way, also, Tim, people were commenting earlier how clean your floor is. They thought it was so clean. They thought it was a fake background.
No,
until someone walked back there.
Yeah, that's my incentive to clean. Yeah, I keep the house very clean. Yeah,
we see that. Damn.
Let me tell you what, Mark's house is
Tim Ventura in my life. Wait, what'd you say, Brad?
Mark runs a tight ship, man. His house is immaculate.
Is it?
Oh yeah. His house is, and all of his lab. I mean, he's got all these boxes, and they're like matrix labeled, and he's got a dedicated computer that has the coordinates of whatever you need, and everything is there. I mean, his lab is tight. He is a very organized. He's a professional, lab guy. I mean, it's awesome. He does, man. I mean, if you want to build something, that's the place to be.
Yeah, well,
I love it.
Yeah, he does have a lot. Yeah, and I think in this kind of goes to the larger picture, right, of APEC in terms of bringing people together. In fact, there's Mark right now.
There's Mark right there.
Mark Snow.
Hey guys.
What's up, brother? Great to see you. We were just singing your praises. Thank you for hopping in the Singularity Lab. I appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, I was listening in. Brad was down here last weekend with Tom. There's another Tom that just joined the crew, and we were working on a ton of stuff. He was just like at it nonstop. I think we pulled like a 16-hour day here at the lab, and we finished at like 7 a.m. It's like we wouldn't stop, and then we did that again too. Like
Oh,
everyone
love
was
it.
working off of each other's energy. It was like straight on
This
manic.
is the coolest thing. Like I could, if when I was thinking about putting together the Singularity Lab, like I couldn't have dreamed up a cooler group of people to be like surrounding the lab, because this is just amazing.
Well, Mark,
Yeah.
I am curious. I kind of wanted to hear from your perspectives, because now you've met Bradley, you've heard his theories in full. I'm assuming if you're pulling till 7 a.m. So, what do you think, man? I mean, like, what are your thoughts
At
on the
first I
experiment?
thought-
Is
I
it
mean-
something that maybe we can even do? Is it possible? Do you think?
I think Brad said it pretty good. I thought he was crazy when he first showed up, and I don't know if it comes across, but Brad is a big guy too.
Is
And
he?
yeah, I was like, how's this guy gonna like really build something accurate? You know, like, and then he started
Giant
working.
fingers.
And then he started working, and he's like super precise with his shit. He's like had these tiny pliers and everything, and stringing it all together. I'm like, holy crap, this guy knows what he's doing. And yeah, so my opinion changed, but I did have a little negative prejudice in the beginning. So I was like, who is this guy?
But you invited him to the lab anyway.
Yeah, I mean, if he's willing to do work, you know, why not?
What were you guys working on?
So actually right now I'm still working on it. So this is like the gyroscope contraption. Right in there where I'm about to cut that piece of metal, make it a little thinner. It's going to fit inside this harness made of aluminum and brass. And there's going to be like a grease fitting. And then we have these gyroscopes that are going to be like 3.5 inches wide, spinning at like 15,000 RPM. They're going to be twisting back and forth like that on 2 servo motors. These 2 servo motors actually. And that's supposed to create reactionless propulsion based on the Mike Gamble's work at Boeing. He said it will create about 1 to 2 pounds of thrust if we do it right. The object is going to weigh, if we're lucky, I'll be able to make it under 10 pounds. But you really got to be careful with the engineering on this thing, because we're talking about very high levels of torque and lots of friction, lots of bearings, lots of vibration. So 10-pound object to make a 1 pound of thrust, it's not going to take off, but it will be able to go up a slight incline. And it'll be great for like small satellites, CubeSats and stuff like that. So this is just like one of the first iterations of it, but you know, that's what we're working on right now.
That's awesome.
Sweet.
So
So, what was Bradley working on to help you construct that?
Oh, Brady was just doing his shit, and
Oh, you
Brady
didn't
loves-
slave him out. You didn't make Bradley work on your shit. You just gave him free reign to the lab.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
That's
I
dope.
helped him out and whatever. He was a little shocked. He asked for tape, and I'm like, oh, it's over there. There's like 3 boxes of different types of tape. He has to pick through. Oh, does he want metallic tape? Does he want Kapton tape, packing tape, duct tape?
Yeah.
And
He's
so-
got
and
everything.
so-
He's got everything. And if
Yeah,
he
you
has
know-
it, he knows exactly where it is, which is amazing.
Well, yeah, there's a computerized system, like a grid system, and we have a whole bunch of these boxes, like post office boxes full of the stuff, and then they have their little numbers. So like A2, you have whatever the machine hardware or whatever. And if you don't remember where something is, you just go to the computer, look it up, and it'll tell you exactly where it is on the shelf.
Oh. Tim, you had something?
Oh, you know, when we started doing this conference, I think it was the first or second one. A fellow named Ron Kita said he called it the Woodstock of anti-gravity, you know, and that stuck with me. And again, this goes back to that mellow, you know, the relaxed thing. But you know, you could see with what Mark is doing too, and then his approach to, you know, welcoming Brad into the lab, and it's like, okay, if you're here to do work, it's, you know, it's just kind of that's what makes me happy about it. It's open, it's warm, you know, we're trying to embrace different ideas and different perspectives, and you know, it's about intellectual diversity, right? So you know, I mean, I think that all fits. And just when Mark was talking about, you know, having him come in and work on his stuff here, to me that's kind of that Woodstock thing, right?
Yeah.
You see, like
I
I would
love it.
love,
I
like
love
see,
it.
but I
Great
could
work,
see,
Tim.
I could also see how a PhD or a scientist, say, and I always use Neil deGrasse Tyson, but if he was in this room right now, his head would explode. You know, and it's just like, why are you being such a jerk about this, man? Like, why can't you sit in a room like this and spitball and think outside of your world of knowledge and look through the damn telescope already, you priest?
And challenge each other, like have fun. And like I love what Tim was saying about like the laid back attitude. Like, you know, and to your point, Luis, you're exactly right. And NDT would be in here and be like, this is stupid, turn it off, you're ruining my, like he would be an asshole like that. And I just think this idea of like the intellectual superiority, the intellectual authoritarianism is such a negative aspect of you know, some of these popular, you know, science popularizers. Look at this. You got going on here. Look at Mark. I love it.
Dude, he's cutting metal.
I turned off the mic. It's really loud in here now.
Cutting metal with water. I mean, look at, dude, this is the show we're doing today.
Right.
Yeah, this is
Is
awesome.
the water to keep it from getting too hot? Is that the point?
Yeah,
Is that-
I think it just cools it.
Yeah.
Oh,
all right, NDT. Listen to Kristen over here. Luis, they're not
just
cutting it with
bags
water.
Well, they do that though, right? There's
yeah,
high
they
pressure
do.
water.
Yeah, there's high pressure water cutters. Yeah, in fact, when you said that, I was like, is he cutting with water? But no, you're right. No, with the CNC machine, you just use it to cool it. So
Okay. Dude, that is cool, man. Of course, every
so
time we
cool.
come and check in on Mark Sokol, he's doing something like this.
there's some industrial. My ex-wife's father used to work at they make chopper pumps, which are sewage pumps. He worked at a big factory for that. One of the coolest things they had was, if you've ever seen a sandblasting room, right? Like, okay, so this was, but here's the mind-blowing part. Sandblasting creates like silicone, which has some health hazards to it. So I'm not sure why, but this company had a garnet blasting room, the semi-precious stone garnet. Believe it or not, you go in this room, and when you start to use the sandblaster on metal, you're shooting semi-precious stones at metal to sandblast it.
Right.
And when you're done, the floor is covered with garnet, right? And it's like, you know, it's kind of that reddish
Wow.
purple hue. Yeah. So
I really
there's
hope
some
Steven came home.
there's
Who?
some fun toys out there.
That's amazing. You really hope who came home?
Our friend's son was all involved in a whole sandblasting, very complicated. Yeah.
Oh
I hope
yeah.
he came home.
No, these guys were doing. I can't remember. A friend of ours, their son was working for a
Is it
company
a secret?
that they were trying
I
to.
bet they hope
No,
it's a secret.
I don't know. I think they were trying to launch things. It was a company trying to launch satellites into space using
A spring of some sort.
some sort of spring, just like without rocket propulsion. They were trying to like just like. I can't remember. Yeah, that's wild. I'll have to look it up.
Like when you said spring, I just thought Wile E. Coyote.
Yeah.
Something like that. I think.
Well, you
The
see
thing
how
is,
there's
You don't
no,
have
go
to
ahead,
make
Tim.
that. Well, you don't really have to make that work. It's just worth trying, just on general principles, right? If you can make a Wile E. Coyote, even if they could get halfway there, I mean, it's worth the price of admission.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
anyway,
I
the kiddos
definitely
were getting
couldn't
hurt
do
with
it.
the sandblasters, so yeah.
Yeah, I love how Mark's in the background, just like beep boop boop beep boop bop
Yeah.
boop beep.
Oh,
boop.
sorry about that.
He's microwaving gyros together.
No, I'm programming the machine so it knows where the part is.
Hey, you know, Mike,
Amazing.
Lou,
Yeah.
you know what you were just talking about, that intellectual authoritarianism.
Yeah.
And I think it was Neil deGrasse Tyson. I read some tweet. And it was like he was trashing, I don't know, somebody who, you know, people who didn't agree with him. And I got so pissed off. I was like, okay, I'm just going to figure something out that he's got wrong. And I thought about it for a little while, for a few minutes, and I realized that everybody has black hole formation completely wrong. The black holes are not big balls of mass. The way black holes are formed is when the laws of physics get bent against each other. And there's something called the law of conservation of angular momentum. And the reason black holes are created is when the law of conservation of angular momentum forces a star, when it collapses, to spin its equator faster than the speed of light, because essentially, like, you know, the angular momentum thing is like, you know, you see like like a ice skater, like jump up and do an axel, and like she's got her arms out, and so she pulls her arms in, and then she like spins up really fast. Well, that's kind of the reason that is because it took more energy to spin her with her arms out. So there's more energy in her spinning, and it has to be conserved. So when she pulls her arms in, she actually has to speed up to stay at the same energy. And the same thing happens with the sun, or the same thing happens with a star. If it's wider than 2 or 3 times the solar mass, you're talking about millions of miles. And so when that thing makes iron and collapses down, it's moving in so far, so fast, just like an ice skater. It's got a speeder. I mean, that law can't be violated. And so at that point, when essentially the equator of the core of that star goes superluminal, it rips space-time. It rips it all out. And I don't know if you know about like GR, but Einstein theorized that if something goes faster than the speed of light, its mass goes to infinity. And so when something's mass goes to infinity, it becomes a singularity. The gravity is so great that it crushes it into a singularity. And so that is essentially why black holes are made. There's not a function of mass. Black holes are created, and the radius of a black hole is created as a function of the spin according to the law of conservation of angular momentum. And so then what I said was, okay, so all you astrophysicists who have no idea what you're talking about, I said, now it's not a Schwarzschild radius, which is like a function of gravity or a function of mass. It's actually a function of spin. And so all of you theoretical physicists, you can figure out that equation, and then you can put your name on it. It'll be the insert your name / Voorhees radius.
You know what?
Said,
you know what? That's it. I'm putting a cap on things you can name. You've just hit your naming cap. I'm sorry. Like no more names for you.
I know.
I like all figure skaters go to space.
Yeah.
Delta Uniform Tango Charlie Hotel does not agree with you, Brad, and says that they will do the math for you and send it to your email. If you want to share your email and you want to communicate with this person, you are more than welcome to.
Wait, he didn't say he didn't agree, though. He just said he'd do the math for you.
No,
I
he
think
said,
he wants to
no.
be
He
honest.
actually said, Brad, stop. Seriously, it's getting embarrassing, is what he said.
Okay.
It was
Who, for
two-part
you
comment.
or me? I don't feel embarrassed.
Well, then you shouldn't be embarrassed. Don't be embarrassed. Be you. Do you, bro. Do you. But I would definitely, if you want to, you know, I don't know. I'm all about hooking people up here.
Hit
So
up
if y'all
Bradley
want
at
to chat offline,
sonicgravity.com. If you want
What's
to
that?
send him the math, there's his address right there.
yeah, at sonicgravity.com. Hit him up. Delta Uniform Tango Charlie Hotel Echo Sierra. Wow, this has been fantastic. Hey, Mark, you want to check back in? We're going to wrap up here in a second. Do you want to check back in? Do you have anything else you wanted to share?
What's going on?
I don't know what he's doing.
No, he always leaves himself online when he just does other things.
He's just like, just watch my experiment. I'm doing stuff.
Yeah, he gets lonely, right? It's like having company in the lab.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I should just invite him to every Singularity Lab and just have him a little mark box.
Yeah, you really should. I mean, it's not a bad idea, like to have, you know, like
A mark
APEC,
box and a
we'll
Brad
call it the
badge?
APEC cam.
APEC cam, that would be sick.
You know, and we
Or
just
the
bring 'em
Falcon
on.
cam.
Yeah, the Falcon cam. Ooh,
Ooh,
it's got a nice name to it. He can't hear anything we're saying right now.
He should be streaming all the time. I don't know
I
why
agree.
he's not just streaming all the time.
I
Maybe
think
he
he's-
doesn't want anybody to steal his stuff. Maybe
In
that's
one
it.
place or another, I think he's streaming most of the time. He's online a lot, right?
Is
Because
he?
he does stuff with Jeremy Reese, the
Yep.
Alien Scientist channel, and so
Right.
and then APEC, right, on
Mhm.
Saturdays. So yeah, he's streaming a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Well, no, I think what Mike means is kind of just one of those 24-hour streams where it's just a camera that
Like the
just
panda at the
watches.
zoo.
Yeah, like like birds nesting, or something like that. Yeah, totally. Because I mean, I think I think the guys at Skinwalker Ranch should be doing that. I think the guys at UAPX should be doing that. Like, stream what you're doing, even if it's mundane and boring. People are going to watch because they're interested in the collection and the science, and who knows, maybe they're watching while you come up with a breakthrough, and that would be epic to watch. Because the one thing I wanted to ask Mark, and I'm not sure if we'll get him back, but this idea of like, what's the first thing you do if you do crack a propulsion paradigm? Like, where's the first place you're going to go? Who's the first person you call? Do you write a paper? Obviously, let's just say you've tested it and you've retested it and you've come to the conclusion, okay, yes, we have definitely found a new form of propulsion. How do you tell the world? How does somebody who's not a PhD take this idea and propagate it into the conversations that actually start to take it into a more serious place?
You build a tic tac.
Attorney.
you build a tic tac.
Well, she said patent attorney. I said you build a tic tac.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that's what we made APEC for, is to have that way of just disseminating the information so that it can't be covered up again.
Right.
I mean, in many cases, the discovery is going to happen live on air, because a lot of our experiments are done live. So you can't really cover anything up if it's live.
Well, yeah, and there are lots of different ways to get. I mean, I guess you could say the same thing, right, about any new technology, right? Like, how do programmers get the word out when they write new software, right? So, it could go through lots of different channels. Maybe they call their local news organization. Maybe they tell a buddy, and it leaks out to a couple other buddies and becomes a rumor. I mean, there's all sorts of different ways to get things out there.
Oh, Join the Technicians we had him on. He's he works at the lab with Mark, right? Join the Technicians. That's why we made it.
Oh, yeah, that's Jeremiah.
That's Jeremiah. I didn't realize.
Jeremiah Pop. Yeah, that guy's fucking brilliant.
I would have brought him in the room too had I realized who it was. Unfortunately, we're about out of time. So, Tim, maybe you could wrap us up with like, any final thoughts on APEC? Anything else you want?
Yeah, well, I would say check out the website at www.altpropulsion.com. And we have a mailing list. It's an invite list. So if you sign up for that, we send out basically two emails before each conference, usually one on the Wednesday and one on the Saturday morning. So again, altpropulsion.com and sign up for it. And, we have Zoom calls. We have live streaming on Jeremy Reese channel. And again, the whole thing is we're trying to get new ideas on, cross-pollinate, and we're trying to keep everything mellow while we do it.
That's so right, man. I love what you're doing, Tim, and I highly encourage people to go check out APEC. The other thing I did want to say was because Tim and I have been chatting on the phone lately quite a bit, and I always get frustrated because we get like halfway through a call and I'm like, I wish I was live streaming this call. Like, the conversations are so good. So that being said, Tim, hopefully you'll come back and join us again here on the Singularity Lab.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Also,
and I'll be joining you over at APEC as well.
Yeah. I would love to have you guys come on and talk about the show and talk about some of the, I guess you might almost call it like the new school stuff, and again, helping to cross-pollinate.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
Also, I was going to say, maybe you could share your floor cleaning techniques with Twitter. Because I think a lot of people be interested in that.
Tim, my man, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, make sure you go check out it. What is it? Is it just www.a?
Yeah. It's altpropulsion.com.
Right. Alt Propulsion.
We got it right here in the chat for you guys to check out.
There we go. Make sure you check out altpropulsion.com. Tim, what a pleasure it's been, and I look forward to chatting again soon.
Great. Thanks again, guys.
Thank
you, Tim.
Bye-bye. Oops. Bradley Voorhees, could you tell people if they want to learn more? One of the things, okay, so hold on real quick. I just have to do a commercial for Bradley real quick. Whenever I listen to Brad's podcast, I find myself like I'll usually listen to him when I like go for a run or go for a walk or something. And I'm like, literally smiling and laughing out loud while I'm listening to it. And I imagine like the people who like see me like running, they're like, what is wrong with this guy? Because I'm literally laughing out loud. Brad, you're such a fun guy. You're such a brilliant guy. And you got such a sense of humor. And I highly encourage people to go check out Sonic Gravity. Can you tell people how they can do that, Brad?
Oh, sure. Hey, thanks for that endorsement, Mike. That was very kind.
It's true.
So I have a website, sonic-gravity.com. And there's a place on there where you can just like shoot me an email. So I podcast on a lot of things, but I've really been kind of sucked into sort of, Mike and Lou's and Kristen's realm of like futurism and UFOs and stuff. So if you want to check out I have maybe 14 or 15 episodes on sort of the mechanics of UFOs, and it's sort of like a journey. I say a lot of things that are kind of wrong and fucked up in the first few ones, and I sort of refine my approach as I go. So I don't, and again, like I want everybody to know that I'm not here to change anybody's mind or push an agenda or tell somebody else that they're wrong or whatever. This is, my podcast is just about viewing the universe through the eyes of a madman. And so, if you submit to my sonic gravity and you orbit and listen to my podcast for however long, all you're going to get is my take. So, and I'm not pushing it on anybody. And if people don't believe it or don't like it or whatever, then
shove it up your mass hole.
So yeah, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much. I just love sharing.
Thank you so much, Brad. Maybe you could do an episode. Alex Garcia said he's our resident producer here, and I know we're wrapping it up, but he wants to know what your thoughts are on the one electron theory. So maybe you could do a podcast about that.
Yeah, I don't. Me, I think our matter is oscillating, and when it's only 2 Planck times of the 12.5 Planck times of that loop, are we interacting with it? I don't think the one electron theory works because I think it's oscillating. So, most of the time, 5.25 to 1, we wouldn't have an electron. And so,
Brad, I should make a podcast on it.
Oh, sorry. I wanted me to answer the question. My bad. I love you guys.
I'm just messing with you, bro.
Oh man, I love it. Love this show.
Hey, Brad, thank you again. I meant every word I said about your podcast. Y'all go check out sonicgravity.com. Later, brother.
Okay.
Mark Sokol's still at it.
Yeah, he's cutting.
Still at it, dude. Still cutting metal. Love it.
I'm gonna be doing this until like 2 a.m. probably, until I just like fall on my ass and just can't stay up any longer.
Dude, I just want to come there just to hang out and clean stuff after you guys dirty it, because I would be completely useless in there. But just to listen to you guys talk and sort of try and get an understanding of what's happening would be fun.
I have an airplane here. This is my backpack paramotor.
What?
Back and fly. Yeah.
Please sell that. Please sell that. That just
Did you make that?
all sorts
it's a
of
commercial product.
Oh, it's a commercial product.
You can buy that.
Yeah, you can buy this.
What?
This is,
Wait. So you can it lifts you off for real?
Yeah, it's a powered paraglider. Oh, there's a wing overhead, like a big paraglider wing, and this just pushes you forward.
They're safer than like kite sails,
right? You attach it to a parachute, and
you're basically flying a parachute, and this is just what pushes you.
Wow,
you've never seen those in Florida, Michael?
No.
Oh, they're all over Florida.
They're all over the place.
I don't leave the lab much.
Okay, so this is the CNC machine. We're getting a close up on it before. We got a cutter. We're going to have a welding station here next week.
Nice.
And
oh man, I love
and all.
A forklift.
Look at this. I love documenting your journey, Mark. You got to come back on more often, bro. This is great.
Yeah.
Right.
We just like a whiteboard in the middle of the shop just to brainstorm shit. Oh, and this is some really cool stuff over here. This transformer puts out 15,000 volts at 1.3 amps. So that's a lot of fucking current. power. And that's for the Klystron stuff in the Faraday cage, which is right behind me over here. Oh, and these are RF amplifiers that I got from Sandia National Labs. So, like, if the government had anti-gravity, this is the equipment they probably discovered it with.
Wow.
Wow.
We got like surplus when we were in New Mexico.
So you just like pick up like old CIA shit.
Yeah, pretty much.
At like garage sales.
Really cool that. Oh, we love eBay. It's like the anti-gravity research superstore. This is a contraption that me and Jeremiah built. It's a 1 million volt March generator. So you basically put in 30,000 volts in the bottom there through those red wires, and it pulses 1 million volts when it gets fully charged.
Wow.
That's got to be your Christmas ornament.
No, this thing's like super dangerous.
He's like Luis. You're gonna kill somebody. Like, come on.
I mean, this is something that Jeremiah is afraid to touch. Like,
yeah, it sounds terrifying.
It's really loud too. It's like it makes like a 4-foot spark. So yeah, we're like simulating lightning for some experiments.
Wow, that's amazing, brother.
You're a wild man.
Love it.
You're a wild
love it
man.
so much.
And it is fun.
Hey, do me a favor. If people want to check out your stuff, if they want to learn more about you, how do they do that?
You can check us out at falconspace.org. That'll take you to our YouTube channel. We're on APEC all the time, the Alternative Propulsion Engineering Conference. That's altpropulsion.com. That's where you get most of the the updates. I don't post much on the YouTube channel. I usually go to other folk because whatever, I just don't have time for it. There's also Jeremy Reese's channel, Alien Scientist. You should definitely check that out as well. He has lots of great content. And if you're in northern New Jersey, we're in Hawthorne.
Stop by.
I'm gonna stop next time I'm in Jersey. We're stopping by. Kristen and I are coming to the lab for
definitely.
sure.
We have a guest room actually. We have a couple beds available.
I didn't say I was gonna sleep there.
I'm
kidding.
It's clean.
Oh no! Yes, we heard your home is exceptionally clean, so we will stay there.
Okay. It's also walking distance from the lab too. That's pretty cool.
That's amazing. Nice. Mark, you are the man. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you popping on last minute, brother. Thanks a lot. And thank you for treating Sonic Gravity with such amazing hospitality. That's so dope.
Yeah, I actually met him on the Big Phone Home.
I remember.
He was like, yeah, I'm going to come down to your lab. And we're like, okay.
And then all of a sudden, a giant comes walking through the door.
The guy's huge. He's really big.
You really never can tell until you get that perspective.
Yeah.
Well, that voice, though.
He's like a full, like,
I love his voice.
2 heads taller than me. And I was like, how's this guy going to be twisting, like, 30 gauge wire? But he has it figured out.
I can't even press one button on my phone at a time.
Yeah.
30 gauge wires, like, 2 times the thickness of your hair, or maybe a little bit thicker than that, but really thin wire. And he's sitting there playing with it, setting up. I don't know if you saw those pictures of his setup, but yeah, it was pretty intense. Like the precision to his workmanship was amazing. And I was complimenting him on that once I saw him doing that.
That's impressive. That's impressive. All right, brother. Well, thank you again for joining us, and we'll talk to you real soon. Make sure you go check out Falcon. Sorry, what was the website again?
Falconspace.org. That'll take you to our YouTube channel.
Amazing.
And altpropulsion.com.
Right, altpropulsion.com. Excellent. All right, brother. Thank you so much for joining us. Talk soon.
Talk to you later.
Most amazing show.
I mean, yeah, dude. It's I just want to see it work, and then
I know.
Back to me, tell me how it works, because the lead up to it, I'm just like,
and that's a fact.
Yeah, I mean, like I remember when Bradley first came on the show and he was spitting his idea, and I actually got it. I was like, oh wow, I actually understand this a little bit. Okay, maybe I'm not lost. But but yeah, I mean, I want to see one of these guys crack it and just like I said, just make science bend at the knee.
Yes.
Would be kind of fun to watch
with something called the vag
in the mass hole.
In the mass hole. You can't make this stuff up.
Can you imagine like a Jake Tapper today in today's science news, a mass hole was discovered. You know, like, and then they show huge Bradley Voorhees, you know, just
just a massive giant fingers, and just working on like tiny gauge wire,
saying, "I told you so,"
and that's a fact.
And that's a fact. Yep.
Byron McDonald, thank you so much for supporting the show. We are supported by viewers like you. I'm going to put up the. I forgot to put up the Patreon, but if you want to support, if you love this show, if you love the Singularity Lab and you want to support it, make sure you hit the Patreon down below.
Was there a video you were supposed to put up at the end?
I forgot. But I'm going to put it up at the end.
Play before the end credits.
You want to play right now? Okay, we'll play it.
No, not right this second. Not right this second, because you also got to tell people about the podcast and where they can find it.
Right. There's so much to do.
So much to do. You guys, we have podcasts, Spotify, iTunes, of course, the Patreons. Thank everybody here for the super chats. Byron McDonald with a $5 super chat says, glad I showed up today. Fantastic show. Thank you guys so damn much. Tina Tomaszewski for moderating the chat. She's so damn fast with those links. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. That way, every time we go live, you know about it. So every Thursday, Mike's here with the Singularity Lab. We go live Monday through Wednesday and Friday. So definitely check the links out below. We've got the link trees down there where you can find merch, where you can find all of our links, our Discord. So it's and Alex, you've got new branding as well. You've got new branding, and then we've also got new branding for Daniel Miller's show as well, which will be cool.
Shaping up. It's shaping up around here.
It's going to be cool. Also, next tomorrow we got Micah Hanks at 1:00 PST. So join us for that. It's going to be the KGRA show tomorrow. And then next week's shaping up to be really fun too. We got Peter Robbins coming in, Chris Plains coming in Friday. And then we've also got, oh my gosh, who do we got? I can't remember, but you guys will find out. It's going to be a fun week. It's going to be a fun week.
Amazing. Thank you so much to Daniel Jacobian for the €10 donation.
Mm-hmm.
Euro? Yeah.
I call everything $1 now.
Stop trying.
Just make it simple, but because the only one that doesn't really work out to be the same is the Czar. That one's way off.
Oh, yeah. I remember when you got your first 500 Czar.
Yeah, somebody said 500 Czar. We all lost it thinking it was a $500 donation. Ended up being like $28 or something.
Which is still super cool.
Still awesome. Yeah. But that's when we first started the show. But we can't thank you guys enough. It's been an absolute pleasure to provide all these shows and content for you guys, and you guys are so damn supportive with the memes and everything.
The deep fakes.
The deep fakes are
Grant and Akashi Chris, just amazing. Also, if you like the chat, if you like hanging out in the chat here during our live shows, you will love the Discord channel. We've got everybody who's in these live chats is in the Discord. So if you want to hang out with these folks behind the scenes, all you got to do is go check out Discord. Thank you so much for mentioning that, Arlene. Love you lots, Matthew Riot. We appreciate it. All of you, FIFA, Bob Marley, Tina, Alien Bouquet Face, Fight the Young Bunton. What did you say? All right, we're gonna go.
Later, y'all.
Do you want to know about the future? I do, and I know you do too. That's why we do what we do, right here at the Singularity Lab, just for you. Do you want to know about stories about breaking technology? Science? Look right here, I'm looking at my sheet. Marty did it, why can't you? Remember, this is a public access channel. We rely on your donations, so just hit the Patreon. So we can continue to bring you updated science and technology, breaking news every single day.